Alright everyone, it's time for the Occult video number 342, an occult analysis of the Wickerman. Now of course we're not talking about the Nicolas Cage attempt that, it's not really the Wickerman. It's not even really a movie, it's more like something that some rando slapped together online and supposed was funny because they were high at the time. We're talking about the cult classic 1970s Wickerman. Of course, with Christopher Lee, etc. And that chick that, by the way, the Pink Panther got married to briefly. I think they divorced. That was very funny. He was also 3 roles in Doctor Strangelove, including the President. Here's an analysis. First and foremost, we'll talk about the basic movie. Then we'll talk about an illusion that actually Christopher Lee made and a little bit of analysis that piggybacks upon that. It has to do with the removal of large amounts of material, actually, from the movie, and what I think it probably related to. I got 2 educated guesses, but I'll get into that. Firstly, if you watch this movie, it's overtly paganistic. It's overtly occult, therefore magic and superstition are a big part of it, because that's a whole theme. And spoiler alerts, of course. The theme is, of course, a police officer has been dispatched to a remote Scottish island called Summerisle to search for a missing girl. And then he's led through a series of wild goose chase sort of polemics, which have a literal pagan meaning, a literal pagan background, that he discovers later, but he ignores it in his ignorance about what's going on. He thinks that he's saving a girl from being sacrificed in order to restore crops that failed the previous year. And this island's full of pagans that are having orgies and drinking a lot and doing pagan things and a lot of sexual overtones too, which tends to be part and parcel with any solar religion. They're basically the same thing. I can get into that as well. The symbology behind it is pretty well established, though. I don't think anyone really needs a primer in it per se. And in the end, of course, he finds out the girl was a willing participant in the same goose chase. He's been led through a series of basically play-acting metaphors that shadow literally their entire festive system. And so he becomes a sacrifice, and he gets put in the Wicker Man and burned alive with a bunch of animals. At the end of the movie, and this is where the Christopher Lee connection comes in. I saw a clip of him, and you can find it on YouTube, probably on Rumble by now too. There's a clip where he's talking about Wicker Man, and says, it's one of his favorite movies. Lord Summerisle is a great character, but that an inordinate proportion of what they had recorded was cut from the movie. That is, that the movie's meaning was significantly changed, actually, by the removal of, I think he said 20 or 30 minutes of footage, and he was convinced. He seemed a little bit sorrowful about this. He's like, well, I'm convinced that the footage still exists. It'd be great to have it and do a recut. I agree, and I think that posthumously, to honor his memory, someone should find that. Whoever would be empowered to scour through the back of the warehouse where this was recorded or whatever. Hopefully it wasn't lost in the Universal fire or something. No, please do find that and at least put the raw footage on the internet or something for people. Give us a bone. Here's what I think it relates to. And it has to do with a careful analysis of the movie and specifically 2 things about it. The first is the character of the officer himself. The second is the ending of the movie. This is what and third, and I can piggyback that in as well, you could say the personality of Lord Summerisle. Now, when you watch this film, this is why I think the missing material most likely revolves around the bulk of the movie. There are some scenes in which the police officer is portrayed as being more heroic. He's a Christian, by the way, a fervent Christian. So part of the metaphors he's going through, he's tempted by this young chick who's getting all sexual and singing about mating basically to him and for Jesus, because he doesn't believe in it before marriage. He's resisting, and she's actually impressed by that and so forth, because he has to be a virgin in order to be an acceptable sacrifice. See, if he had just screwed the chick, he wouldn't have gotten thrown in the Wicker Man and everything would have been over, and then I guess the crops would have failed. In some scenes, he's depicted as being heroic. He's depicted as he's doing his job, he's trying to find this lost girl, he's increasingly concerned she's going to be killed or something, or already has been, and so he's portrayed as good, insofar as you can use that absolute term. In other scenes, he's portrayed as being a bigot. He's portrayed as he's ignorant of what's going on. Throughout the movie, at the very least, he's ignorant of the fact that he is the hunter being hunted. He's actually clueless He's not saving anyone. All he's doing is spurning all of the customs of this island in which these people have gathered to live a noble life. Likewise, on the flip side, the pagans are similarly treated. The paganistic people of the island are simultaneously portrayed as loving and nature-based and having a great time, and they're basically, they built a paradise. But at the same time, what do they do at the end? They murder this dude. They burn him alive in order to save their crops. This sort of ties into the ending, and I think there may have been initially a much more prolonged ending than I'll get into. So you have this bipolar feel, and what I'm thinking is that at least some of that missing material fleshes out or blurs the lines even more between good and bad in relation to one or both, the main character or the pagans on the island in general. Lord Summerisle, likewise. This probably, almost certainly has at least some of that removed footage, I think, has to do with explaining this. Lord Summerisle, when he's first talking to the officer, appears to be non-genuine in his pagan beliefs. He alludes to his father building various strains of fruits and vegetables that could survive the climate so that they could have fruit and shit year-round, and that he had given people back their joy by ridding the island of Christianity and bringing back paganism. But the way in which he frames it is more like, well, the people are happy, there's no harm in it, we're just having a good time, we've got food, the people were miserable before, they were just fishermen living on a rock basically, now look how happy they are. And so we gave them back their gods. He refers to it in character, and Christopher Lee, because of his acting style, I don't think that he would do this not on purpose. I think that the expression of the character was as genuine as he could make it, because that's the kind of actor he tended to be. Very literalistic in that approach to meaning. Sign of a good actor, by the way. He's capable of expressing that without saying it, just by his act, his gestures and so forth. The insinuation there is that he's not genuine. He doesn't believe in these old gods. He's convinced other people to. And he's done that to give them joy back and to make the island function and to be, actually sort of with it. At the end of the movie, when the Wickerman is about to be lit with the cop inside of it, he seems extremely genuine about his beliefs. I'm almost thinking that there was a transformation from start to finish of Lord Summerisle in mind. That is, that initially, he's not even a true believer. He's sort of following in his dad's footsteps for mainly economic and pragmatic purposes. But by the end, he's been so exhilarated by the chase, so to speak, and maybe by additional actions that were cut from the film involving the main character, that he's become convinced maybe the pagan gods really are real. In the end, when Lee is acting and talking about sacrifices and crops being regenerated and reincarnation, he's acting differently now, isn't he? And it's not just for emotional effect. He's trying to portray that Summerisle actually believes what he's saying. Now, whether this is the result of fanaticism because he's got a crowd around him and he's trying to appeal to them and he's actually a charlatan, or whether he's some transformative experience has caused him to actually believe in his paganism, of course, we don't know. That brings us to the end. I posit that there were two possibilities as far as the end. Based on analyzing that other material and its pagan overtones and the concept of regeneration and so forth, one possibility is I think there would have been an extended ending in which the crops fail anyway, and Summerisle is sacrificed. And the people, presumably after that, they convert to Christianity. That could have been one of the endings. That would have been a letdown for me as a pagan. The other possibility, and I think the more likely one, is that, and I base this partially on the quasi-psychedelic music at times, that's number one, the quasi-psychedelic costumery, the overall orgiastic feeling of the movie, and its pacing, especially near the end. I believe that the true ending of the movie would have been prolonged. It would have shown the crops having been rejuvenated, and it would have slowly devolved into surrealism. That is that, and I certainly would have ended the movie this way because it would have been fucking great. The movie is a little bit on the short side, by the way. You may have noticed. Christopher Lee has told us the reason for this. That is that it's alluded to in a very short scene. Right after the Wickerman is burned, you see maidens going through the meadows, playing with the trees, and the trees are covered in buds, insinuating that they're about to grow fruit, that their crop is bounteous. Things are green and clean and happy, and there's flowers everywhere. If we extend that out, you would end up with a lengthy sort of folk psychedelic potential ending in which people are frolicking around, they're having orgies, and it ties around right to the same concept that's constantly talked about in the movie, even in cut form, which is reproduction. That is the cycle of life, the regeneration, literally creating children and so forth. It's alluded to constantly. The ending doesn't allude to it other than having flowers in it, which tend to be a sexual symbol. I think the initial intent was to prolong it considerably, having literally the next generation be born with the concept that the spirit of this dead Christian has not just reincarnated into the crops, but made the whole island more fertile, including the women. That would fit in with the same kind of metaphors from other parts of the movie, even in uncut form. Now, I could be completely wrong. It could be that the added material just draws it out and makes it more of a mystery. Lee did not particularly elaborate on what kind of material was cut. Sad, because he was there. He would have known what was cut. He could have given a little bit more of an explanation, but now he's keeled over, so he can't do that. It could be that the movie initially, the paganistic aspect was secondary and it was meant to be just more mystery and jump scenes and stuff. Maybe it was more of a pure horror in the jump scare sense. Maybe there was less of that and it was very dry. It was more like a detective movie. I hope and believe, again, based on the analysis I've already talking about here, my belief is that it was more paganistic, more occult in nature. Certainly obsessed with the concept of reproduction based on the fact that that obsession is already present even when we look at the movie in its redacted form. Ultimately, by the way, I would like to say it is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's definitely on the top 10 list. I consider it to have a happy ending. I don't see the human sacrifice at the end as a bad thing. What I see, and perhaps this was the meaning, people interpret it two ways. This is the joy of good movies. I interpret it as a bigot who is completely clueless and not really an asset to society is made useful through magic, through transformative processes that I happen to literally believe in, through reincarnation in a forced manner. I don't believe in that side of things, like, oh, I'm sacrificing you, then my vineyard will grow more. I don't believe in that, but I do believe in reincarnation. It's sort of an adaptation of the concept, and it is pagan in nature. And the basic premise of human sacrifice, yes, I mean, literally, Christendom is based on the very concept. You have the sacrifice of at least the human body, the shell of Jesus, in order to rejuvenate life across the whole planet and perpetuate it eternally by giving grace or faith or whatever to people. It's the same thing. You certainly have a lot of that mentioned in the Old Testament as well. That's about all. Peace out.